The depths of the ocean hold a multitude of secrets and surprises that can leave even the most seasoned sailors in awe. Yet, among these wonders lie tales of tragedy that defy comprehension. Vessels that were once symbols of strength and might are now but twisted metal, and lost souls, their fate forever etched in history. It is as though the sea itself, in its infinite power and mystery, had swallowed them whole, leaving behind only questions and sorrow. And today, we've come to show you such an incident that is surely going to shake you up. So, stay tuned till the end, and don't miss the ending. Each catastrophe, shrouded in its own unique circumstance, left behind a wake of fear and devastation that rippled far beyond the boundaries of the immediate disaster zone. And yet, there is perhaps no greater reminder of the risks that come with exploring the unknown than the Kursk Disaster. A haunting reminder that even the most advanced technologies and skilled crews can fall prey to the unpredictable forces of the ocean. The Kursk submarine, a symbol of Russian naval power, once roamed the depths of the Arctic Ocean with its immense size and sophisticated weaponry. Its steel hull, adorned with the iconic hammer and sickle emblem, sliced through the waves like a knife, its nuclear-powered engines propelling it forward with unstoppable force. Inside, the crew operated with precision, their bodies hardened by months of isolation and the relentless hum of the machinery. They knew that their mission was vital to the defense of their nation, and they carried out their duties with unwavering determination. But the Kursk's glory days were not to last. One fateful day, disaster struck, and the mighty submarine sank to the ocean floor. The news sent shockwaves through Russia and the world as people held their breaths and prayed for the survival of the crew. The nation watched in horror as rescue efforts were launched, but despite the valiant efforts of the rescue teams, the Kursk and its crew were lost to the deep. Years later, the rustling hulk of the Kursk still lies on the seabed, a haunting reminder of the dangers and sacrifices of military life. Its once sleek lines are now twisted and deformed, its engines silent and its weapons useless. Yet the legacy of the Kursk lives on, not only in the memories of those who served aboard her, but also in the lessons learned from her tragic end. Let's throw a light upon the history of Kursk. The Battle of Kursk, one of the largest armoured battles in history, was fought in the vicinity of the city of Kursk during the Second World War in the summer of 1943. This conflict is noticeable for the unprecedented scale of tank warfare it involved, with both sides deploying massive armoured formations in a bid for supremacy. The Russian submarine, Kursk, which came to prominence in the late 20th century, was named after this historic city in recognition of its pivotal role in the war. The battle is widely regarded as a turning point in the war, with the German army suffering a catastrophic defeat that marked the beginning of the end for the Nazi war machine. And the legacy of the Battle of Kursk endures to this day, serving as a testament to the bravery and sacrifice of the soldiers who fought there, and a reminder of the profound impact that military conflict can have on the course of history. Let's now recall the incident. In the vast expanse of the Barents Sea, the Kursk glided silently like a steel leviathan, her sleek form slicing through the water with effortless grace. It was a routine training exercise, and the crew were going through their paces with the precision of a well-oiled machine. But then, without warning, the peace was shattered by a deafening explosion that rented the air and tore open the nose of the mighty vessel. For a moment, the world seemed to stand still as the crew struggled to comprehend the enormity of what had just happened. The force of the blast was like an earthquake, a massive shockwave that radiated outwards in all directions, rattling windows and shaking buildings as far away as the distant shores of Alaska. No one could quite believe it. The Kursk, once an invincible symbol of Russian naval might, lay crippled and broken on the sea floor, a silent testament to the power of the explosion that had torn her apart. It was a tragedy that would haunt the nation for years to come, a stark reminder of the dangers that lurked beneath the waves and the fragility of even the mightiest warship in the face of nature's wrath. The day left behind a trail of destruction and devastation that forever changed the course of Russian military history, a haunting reminder of the catastrophic event that claimed the lives of 118 valiant soldiers who perished in the depths of the ocean, serving their country with unflinching loyalty and unshakable courage. The loss was not just a blow to military pride, but also a devastating blow to the newly elected President Vladimir Putin, whose leadership and credibility were put to the test in the face of such a national tragedy. Yet, despite the magnitude of the catastrophe, the president's refusal to interrupt his vacation to address the situation left many feeling abandoned and betrayed, adding to the already overwhelming sense of loss and heartbreak. As the days passed, the waiting game intensified, and the quayside became a symbol of grief and desperation. The distraught family members clinging to the hope of a miracle stood in silent vigil, watching and waiting for any news of their loved ones. Their frustration grew as the government's disinformation smokescreen only added to their confusion and despair, casting a dark shadow over their already shattered lives. The submarine Kursk loomed large in the eyes of the Russian military, a formidable vessel that represented the pinnacle of their nuclear power. It was a symbol of their dominance, their supremacy, their superiority over any would-be adversaries. And yet, for the crewmen of the K-141 cadre, the Kursk was more than just a tool of war. It was their home, their sanctuary, their refuge from the tumultuous outside world. On that day, as they set out on what was supposed to be a routine naval exercise, the crewmen could not have known that they were embarking on a journey from which they would never return. The Kursk plunged deep into the abyss, its mighty engines churning the ocean into a frenzy, but then, in an instant, disaster struck. A violent explosion ripped through the vessel, tearing it apart and unleashing a cataclysmic force that shattered the hull and extinguished the lives of everyone on board. For the crewmen, it must have been a nightmare beyond imagination. Trapped in a metal coffin at the bottom of the sea with no hope of rescue, they faced a slow and agonizing death. Their last moments must have been filled with terror as they struggled to come to terms with their fate and make peace with their loved ones. The explosion destroyed the bulkhead separating the first and second compartments, started a fire, damaged the control room in the second compartment, and injured or killed the torpedo room and control room crew. It also blew off both the inner and outer tube doors. The torpedo manufacturer refuted this theory, stating that the torpedo's construction would shield against the aforementioned occurrence. Another 5 to 7 torpedo warheads detonated after 2 minutes and 15 seconds. They demolished compartment 4, tore a sizable breach in the hull, brought down the bulkhead separating the first 3 compartments from the decks, and murdered everyone who was still alive, ahead of the 6th compartment. The nuclear reactors safely came to an end. According to analysts, 23 sailors sought refuge in the 9th compartment's limited space and managed to stay alive for more than 6 hours. They attempted to replace a potassium superoxide chemical oxygen cartridge when the supply of oxygen ran short, but the cartridge detonated when it came into contact with oily seawater. Several crew members perished in the ensuing fire, which also set off a flash fire that sucked up all of the remaining oxygen and killed the survivors. The ship's remaining cargo was hauled to Sade Bay on the northern Kayla Peninsula after the human remains were recovered and the hull was properly examined. The ship's 2 nuclear reactors were defueled before being destroyed for scrap. The Soviet Navy eventually decided to remove all of the HTP torpedoes from service after realizing their danger. Amidst the murky depths of the ocean, a catastrophic event occurred that sent shockwaves through the waves and rocked the foundations of naval warfare. The cause of this devastating explosion was the subject of much speculation and conjecture, with theories flying left and right and centre. And yet, amidst this sea of uncertainty, there was one theory that stood out as the most compelling and well supported. According to this theory, the explosion was the result of a fatal combination of poor quality propelling fuel and the use of hydrogen peroxide in the submarine's torpedo. As the submarine plunged through the depths of the ocean, its engines churning and roaring, the volatile nature of the hydrogen peroxide fuel began to reveal itself. Its explosive and flammable properties became apparent, and the tiniest spark was all it took to ignite a deadly chain reaction. The mock military drills that were taking place at the same time added to the chaos and confusion, as the sound of gunfire and the clanging of metal reverberated through the submarine's metal walls. Amidst this cacophony, the explosion occurred, unleashing a devastating force that shook the very foundations of the ocean floor. It's important to remember that the British Navy had explicitly prohibited the use of hydrogen peroxide as a liquid propelling fuel due to its volatile and explosive properties. Yet, in the heat of the moment, and with the adrenaline pumping through their veins, the crew had taken a fatal gamble that ultimately led to their downfall. As the somber analysis of the tragedy unfolded, it became clear to the gathered military ships that a series of explosions had ravaged the once steady vessel. With grim determination, the experts pored over the wreckage, scrutinizing every detail with a meticulous eye. After careful deliberation, it was summarized that not one, but 2 explosions had rocked the ship, their twin onslaughts separated by a mere 2-minute span. To measure the sheer force of these devastating blasts, they turned to the trusted tool of trinitrotoluene, or TNT. The results were sobering, indeed. The first explosion had unleashed a formidable 100 to 250 kilogram of TNT force, while the second was a veritable juggernaut, yielding a staggering 3 to 7 tons of explosive power. The evidence was undeniable. This was a disaster of epic proportions. Another theory that blew away that time. The retired Russian admiral's claim sent shockwaves through the naval community, stirring up old tensions and raising questions about the true nature of the Kursk tragedy. With a deep frown etched onto his weathered face, the Admiral spoke with conviction as he pointed the finger of blame squarely at the US. According to his analysis, the US torpedo had struck the Kursk with deadly accuracy, igniting a chain of events that would lead to the catastrophic loss of life. The Admiral's theory was bolstered by reports of 3 US submarines lurking ominously in the waters near the disaster site. Like silent assassins, these vessels had stalked their prey, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. And when the opportunity presented itself, they unleashed a barrage of deadly torpedoes that would send shockwaves through the Russian Navy for years to come. Despite the mounting evidence, the US denied any involvement in the Kursk disaster, insisting that their submarines had been nowhere near the area at the time. But the Russian people were not so easily swayed. Conspiracy theories abounded, fueled by whispers of covert operations and shadowy government plots. For many, the truth about the Kursk tragedy would forever remain shrouded in mystery, a dark and murky secret that would haunt the nation for generations to come. The maritime authorities had pieced together a grim account of the disaster, revealing the cause of the calamitous event. It was a detonation like no other, caused by the ignition of high-test peroxide, a potent form of hydrogen peroxide which had leaked from the vessel's very casing. The torpedo, fueled by a low-cost, highly combustible substance, had exploded, causing a devastating chain reaction that had sent the submarine plummeting into the inky blackness below. But none of the theories have yet proven to be true. And what the reality is, the desperate cries of 118 souls lost to the abyss echoed through the frigid waters. Despite the absence of nuclear warheads, the perilous situation loomed ominously as the unfathomable depths threatened to claim even more casualties. The valiant efforts of rescue teams from around the world were impeded by the treacherous conditions, with icy tendrils wrapping around the submarine's hull, while the tempestuous sea churned and swirled in fury. The search for answers, for survivors, for closure, was a harrowing reminder of the unforgiving nature of the ocean and the perilous risks of maritime exploration. 23 sailors clung to each other, desperate for rescue, but the merciless sea had other plans. The rescue team arrived too late, finding the compartment's door sealed shut, an ominous sign of the tragedy that had unfolded inside. As they pried open the door, a scene of horror awaited them. The lifeless bodies of the Norwegian divers were discovered within the container, victims of the suffocating carbon monoxide. The once hopeful haven had become their final resting place, a poignant reminder of the dangers of the deep. The Richter scale's thunderous roar marked the initial explosion's birth, its density registering at a mere 2.2. But the second explosion, like an angry dragon spitting fire and brimstone, erupted with a ferocity that defied measurement, its density fluctuating between 3.5 and 4.4 on the Richter scale. The 118-man crew of the submarine, once a unified force, was now trapped in a hellish reality. Death had come knocking, and it would not be denied. A handful of survivors, numbering only 23, were left to endure a prolonged and agonizing struggle for life. Yet despite their tenacity, the deadly grip of the inferno proved too much to bear. One by one they succumbed to the suffocating heat, the acrid stench of burning metal, and the unyielding embrace of death itself. The tragedy was complete. The once proud submarine was reduced to a twisted hulk of molten metal and shattered dreams. The submarine explosions reverberated with the ferocity that shook the very foundation of maritime safety. Fearful whispers swept across the globe like a dark, foreboding storm, as people anxiously speculated about the dire consequences of a nuclear catastrophe. However, the frantic throbbing of worried hearts was soon replaced by a palpable sense of relief as the nuclear reactors of the submarine were deftly throttled down, and the ominous spectre of radioactive fallout dissipated like wispy smoke. Yet, even as the world breathed a collective sigh of relief, the shadow of disbelief and outrage lingered on. The Russian authorities' stubborn refusal to acknowledge the magnitude of the crisis left a bitter taste in the mouths of those who watched helplessly as the drama unfolded. The offers of rescue assistance from the United States and the United Kingdom were rebuffed, leaving the world to wonder at the Russian government's callous disregard for human life. It was a heart-wrenching moment. 5 days after the Kursk submarine tragedy, when the Russian authorities finally relented to allow Western rescue teams to come to the aid of the fallen crew, the desperate efforts of these valiant rescuers, however, were in vain. The 118 sailors who had gone down with the submarine had already passed to the great beyond. These men had been the epitome of courage, dedicating their lives to the Navy without receiving just compensation. In a cruel twist of fate, their selflessness and bravery had been rewarded with an early demise. They had given their all to serve their country, only to find themselves the victims of the very same military superiority and pride that they had fought so hard to maintain. The loss of these innocent lives was a sobering reminder of the high price of ambition and misplaced priorities. The once great Kursk submarine, now a rusted hulk on the seafloor, was a testament to this fact. It lay there as a monument to the cost of unchecked ambition and a tragic reminder of the human toll of war. Furthermore, a year later, a Dutch salvage company was able to recover the remains of the submarine, giving the families of the lost sailors some semblance of closure. The discovery of the bodies of 115 of the crew members was a bittersweet moment, but it was a reminder that even in the darkest moments there's always a glimmer of light. The events that transpired, involving the Russian Fleet Command in relation to the Kursk submarine disaster, proved to be a tumultuous affair. The confusion that married the initial search and rescue operation was compounded by the subsequent decline of offers of aid from the Western world. The use of ineffective Soviet mini-submarines in the rescue efforts further aided to the sense of crisis, with the Russian people left shocked and dismayed. The controversy surrounding the disaster and the subsequent handling of the rescue operation brought criticism to bear on President Vladimir Putin, who was widely perceived to have failed to manage the situation adequately. The consequences of the Kursk disaster were far-reaching and have had a lasting impact on the Russian psyche, serving as a stark reminder of the dangers and risks inherent in submarine operations. For the Kursk was more than just a submarine. It was a symbol of Russian pride and power, a reminder of the nation's strength and determination. And even in its final moments, as it slipped beneath the waves, it remained a testament to the bravery and sacrifice of the men and women who served their country at sea. For the Kursk, like all great vessels, may one day be forgotten by the world, but it will never be forgotten by those who knew and loved her. Though its crewmen are gone, their sacrifice will never be forgotten, and their legacy will live on as a reminder of the dangers and uncertainties that come with the pursuit of military might. And this brings us to the end of the video. We hope you found our videos informative and thought-provoking. If you haven't already, be sure to hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss an update from us. And remember, disasters can happen to anyone, but by coming together and sharing knowledge, we can build a safer and more resilient future. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.